She looked at me like I was no one. And for the first time in my life, I envied the silence more than her eyes because at least silence didn't hurt this much. The doctor had warned me before I stepped into her hospital room. She survived the crash, but she might not remember everything. Sometimes memory loss after trauma isn't selective, it can be cruelly precise. I thought I was ready. I thought love was strong enough to break through even the deepest amnesia. But when my wife's gaze landed on me, there was no spark, no recognition, no whispered relief of "you're here." Just polite confusion. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice careful, almost formal. I swallowed the sob clawing its way up my throat. "I'm your wife, for God's sake. I've been your anchor, your safe place, your everything." Instead, I smiled with trembling lips. "I'm Emily," I said softly, "and I'm here for you." Her name was Claire. My Claire. The woman who used to curl up against me at night, pressing her cold toes against my legs just to hear me squeal and complain before giving in. The woman who'd kissed me in a crowded diner at midnight, daring the world to look. The woman who once promised she'd never forget how I looked on our wedding day, hair wild, veil crooked, laughing because neither of us could stop crying. And now she looked at me like I was just another visitor bringing flowers. The hospital smell clung to me for days, that sharp sterile scent mixing with the ghost of her shampoo on the pillow at home. I couldn't sleep in our bed. I lay on the floor, clutching her sweatshirt, the one she always wore when we watched Netflix on Sundays. Her sister, Anna, tried to be gentle when she called. She remembers us. Me, Mom, even her high school math teacher. But not you. I bit my lip until it bled. "So the accident stole just me?" Anna's sigh was heavy with pity, the kind that feels like salt on an open wound. "Give her time. Maybe it'll come back." But what if it didn't? What if I was erased permanently from the one person who mattered most? 2 weeks later, she was discharged. I drove her home, or rather to our home. Only to her it wasn't. She sat in the passenger seat, quiet, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The same hands that once traced constellations across my back. She looked out the window, the streets of suburban Boston flashing by, bathed in late October sunlight. "This house. It's beautiful," she murmured as I parked in the driveway. "It's yours," I whispered, heartbreaking at my own words. "Ours." She walked through the door like a stranger at an open house, admiring the framed photos on the wall as though they were gallery exhibits. Us at the Grand Canyon. Us at Christmas in ugly sweaters. Us kissing under a shower of confetti on New Year's Eve. She stopped at one photo, our wedding picture. I was laughing mid-kiss. She was holding my face like I was a miracle. Her eyes softened. "She looks happy," she said quietly. "She was," I whispered. She echoed, tilting her head. I looked at her, fighting tears. "You." Her throat worked as she swallowed. But she didn't answer. The first night back, I made spaghetti her favorite. She twirled the fork absent-mindedly, polite, detached. "This is good," she said. I smiled tightly. "You always loved it." "Oh," she replied, as though it were trivia about someone else's life. Later, I caught her staring at the bookshelf in the living room. Her eyes landed on a novel with dog-eared pages. She pulled it out, flipped through it. "You underlined the love scenes," she said with a ghost of a laugh. "That was you," I corrected gently. "You always wanted to remember the lines that made your heart race." She looked down, as if ashamed of a life she couldn't touch. "I don't feel it," she whispered. "Not yet." The word sliced me open. Not yet. 2 small syllables, but heavy enough to crush hope or plant it. Days turned into weeks. Every morning I brewed coffee the way she liked it, low sugars, splash of oat milk. She'd sip politely, thank me, but her eyes remained distant. I tried not to push. I showed her photo albums, our playlist, the little rituals of our life. Some nights, when loneliness howled too loud, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom watching her sleep. I wanted to climb into bed, curl against her, inhale her warmth. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because to her I wasn't her wife. I was a stranger hovering on the edge of her world. And yet, there were moments. Fleeting, fragile moments when the woman I loved flickered through the fog. Like the afternoon she was reading on the porch, sunlight tangled in her black hair. She laughed at something in the book, that same throaty laugh that had once undone me. My heart lurched. I was looking at her. Or the night we watched the first snowfall and she whispered, "It feels like magic." The exact words she had used our first winter together. I didn't tell her. I just smiled, letting hope bloom quietly in the ruins. But hope is dangerous. Hope makes you greedy. It happened one evening. I was folding laundry when she walked in, holding one of my hoodies. She pressed it to her face, inhaling deeply. "Why does this smell like comfort?" she asked softly. Something inside me cracked wide open. "Because," I said, voice shaking, "it's the smell of home. Of us." Her eyes locked on mine. And for the first time there was no politeness, no confusion. Only something raw, searching, almost trembling. I took one step closer. My hand lifted, hovering near her cheek. I wanted to touch, to remind her body of what her mind had lost. But before I could, she whispered, "I don't know who you are." The words shattered the moment. She dropped the hoodie and fled the room, leaving me alone with the echo of our almost touch. I sank to the floor, clutching the fabric, sobbing into it. 'Cause maybe she was right. Maybe she didn't know me. Maybe she never would. And yet, the cruelest truth lingered like a haunting. Even if she had forgotten me, I could never forget her. The days after her breakdown blurred into a haze of silence. Claire avoided Minette cruelly, not intentionally, but in the way a stranger avoids eye contact on a bus. She slipped around me in the kitchen, closed her bedroom door when I walked down the hall, answered questions with clipped politeness. It was like living with a ghost of someone who was still alive. I thought about moving out, giving her space. But the thought of leaving her alone in the house that was once ours felt unbearable. I had promised her in our vows, in sickness and in health, for better or worse. Was this not the worst we had sworn to survive together? Still, the ache of rejection was constant, a dull knife pressed against my chest. Some mornings I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and practiced smiling, so she wouldn't see me breaking. One evening, I was chopping vegetables when she appeared in the doorway. She looked hesitant, as if unsure whether to step into my orbit. "I'm sorry," she said, voice quiet. I set down the knife, heart hammering. "For what?" "For hurting you," she murmured. Her eyes met mine for the first time in days. "I don't mean to. I feel lost." My throat tightened. "I know. And you don't owe me apologies for something you can't control." She stepped into the kitchen, fingers twisting nervously. "You keep looking at me like I'm supposed to be someone I can't remember. And it scares me because I don't want to disappoint you." I took a slow breath, steadying myself. "You're not disappointing me. You're here. Alive. That's all that matters." Her lips parted as if to argue, but instead she whispered, "You really loved me, didn't you?" The question was a blade wrapped in velvet. I wanted to scream, "I still do, I always will," but all I said was, "With everything I had." She nodded, almost shyly, and then turned away. Yet her presence lingered in the room long after she left, like a warmth I couldn't reach but still craved. The shift was small at first, almost imperceptible. She started asking questions. Did I like horror movies? "Yes," I answered, smiling faintly. "But only if you could bury your face in my shoulder during the scary parts." "Did we fight a lot?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "Mostly about whose turn it was to do laundry. But you always made up with ice cream at midnight." "Did I love you?" she asked one night, voice trembling. I swallowed hard. "Yes. More than anything." Her eyes softened, but she didn't reply. One Saturday we went grocery shopping together. It felt mundane, ordinary, but to me it was monumental. She reached for a jar of marinara sauce and frowned. "This brand," she said. "It feels familiar." My chest ached with hope. "It's the one you always bought. You said it tasted like your grandmother's recipe." She blinked, staring at the jar as if it might unlock something hidden. Then she slipped it into the cart without another word. Later that night, she cooked her spaghetti, for the first time since the accident. The kitchen filled with the scent of garlic and basil, the same scent that had been the backdrop of our countless evenings together. When she set the plate in front of me, she hesitated. "Will it taste the same?" I smiled through tears. "It already does." She ate quietly, but I caught her watching me more than once, as if studying the way I looked at her. Winter descended slowly, wrapping Boston in snow and gray skies. The house felt both too big and too small. Some nights she stayed in her room, but other times she drifted into the living room, curling up on the couch while I read. One evening, the power went out during a storm. We lit candles, the flickering glow painting shadows on the walls. She wrapped herself in a blanket and sat beside me, closer than she had in weeks. "It feels cozy," she said softly. I turned toward her, heart pounding. "It used to be your favorite. Snowstorms, candles, blankets, us." Her eyes lingered on mine, unblinking. The silence stretched, heavy with something unnamed. And then she whispered, "I don't remember, but it feels right." Her hand brushed against mine under the blanket. Tentative, testing. My breath caught, but I didn't pull away. For the first time since the accident, we sat together not as strangers, but as something almost what we had been. But memory is a cruel trickster. The very next morning she was distant again. She avoided my gaze over breakfast, mumbled an excuse about needing fresh air, and left the house for hours. When she returned, she looked shaken. I asked where she had gone, but she only said, "I needed space." I didn't push. I was terrified that pressing too hard would send her spiraling further away. That night, as she passed my room, she paused at the doorway. "Emily." I looked up, startled. Her voice was hesitant. "Do you ever wish I hadn't survived?" The question was a knife to the gut. "Don't you dare say that," I whispered fiercely. "I would rather have you alive and not remembering me than gone forever." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she quickly turned and walked away. I lay awake for hours replaying her words. Was she struggling because she felt guilty for not loving me back the way she once had? Was she suffocating under the weight of a marriage she couldn't recall? Or was she scared because some part of her was beginning to feel something again? The breakthrough came unexpectedly. We were decorating the Christmas tree. She hummed along to a carol, her fingers carefully hanging ornaments. She paused at Oni's small glass globe with our initials painted inside a heart. Her hand trembled. "This," she whispered. My chest tightened. "Our first Christmas together. We bought it in that little shop downtown. You said it was cheesy, but you couldn't stop smiling when we hung it." Her eyes filled with tears. "I see it." She pressed the ornament to her chest, shaking. "I remember laughing. I remember you kissing me under the lights." I froze, afraid to breathe. "You remember?" She nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Just a flash. But it was real. It felt real." I moved closer, gently taking her hand. "That's us, Claire. That's our life." She looked at me, her face crumpling. And then, for the first time since the accident, she leaned into me, burying her face against my shoulder. I held her, my own tears falling freely. For a moment the world stopped. For a moment she was mine again. But memory doesn't return in straight lines. It comes in shards, sharp and scattered. And sometimes those shards cut. The night after her Christmas memory, I found her sitting alone in the dark, clutching a photo. It was of us at the beach, arms wrapped around each other. "I don't know if I'm her," she whispered. "The woman in these pictures. I don't know if I can be her again." I knelt beside her, taking her trembling hands in mine. "You don't have to be her. You just have to be you. And I'll love you in every version, in every memory or none at all." She looked at me, searching, as though trying to find herself in my reflection. And maybe she did. Because that night, when I tucked her into bed, she caught my hand before I could leave. "Stay," she murmured. I did. I lay beside her, our fingers intertwined. Not as a stranger, not as a ghost, but as her wife. Even if she couldn't remember, her heart had. The morning after I slept beside her for the first time, I woke to the warmth of her body curled against mine. For a second I forgot everything, the accident, the lost memories, the ache of being erased. For a second it was like the world had reset, and I was just Emily waking up next to my wife. But then she stirred, blinking sleepily, and I saw the confusion flicker across her face. She pulled back slightly, as if unsure how she'd ended up tangled in my arms. "Good morning," I whispered carefully. Her lips parted, hesitation shadowing her features. "Did I ask you to stay?" "You did," I said softly. "Last night." She exhaled slowly, pressing her palm to her forehead. "I don't remember." The words shouldn't have hurt, they were expected by now, but each time they did, like fresh cracks in already fractured glass. Still, she didn't push me away. She stayed in bed a little longer, silent but close, and that was enough to keep hope alive inside me. Over the next weeks, we found ourselves orbiting closer. It wasn't dramatic. Not a sudden flood of recovered love. It was fragile, hesitant, like walking across ice that could shatter at any moment. She started spending evenings with me, sitting on the couch while we watched old shows. Sometimes she laughed at jokes she must have heard a dozen times before, and I'd steal glances at her profile, memorizing every twitch of her smile. She helped me cook, her movements uncertain but earnest, as though she were learning life all over again. She'd ask questions: did I like spicy food? Or did we ever go camping? And I'd answer, each memory I shared like placing another brick in a bridge between us. One night, as snow fell outside, we made hot chocolate together. She stood by the stove, stirring, her black hair falling loose around her face. The sight of her made my chest ache. "Emily," she said suddenly, her voice so quiet I almost missed it. "Yes." She didn't look at me, eyes fixed on the swirling cocoa. "Why did you love me?" I froze, the question striking deep. "Because you were brave," I said after a moment. "Because you made me laugh when no one else could. Because you believed in me even when I didn't. Because you kissed me like the world might end if you didn't." Her hands trembled on the spoon. Slowly, she turned to face me, her eyes glistening. "Do you still?" I stepped closer, my heart thundering. Every second of every day. For a heartbeat, she looked like she might close the distance between us. But then she flinched, as though frightened of her own feelings, and quickly turned away. The tension between us became unbearable. Some nights she sought me out, asking for stories, pressing for details about our past. Other nights she retreated into herself, avoiding my gaze, her walls higher than ever. I told myself to be patient. Healing wasn't linear. But patience doesn't quiet a heart that's starving for love. One evening, after another day of circling around each other like shadows, I broke. We were sitting in the living room, the silence thick. I finally asked, "Do you want me to stop trying?" Her head snapped up, startled. "What? Do you want me to let go?" My voice cracked. "Because I don't know how to love you halfway, Claire. Either I'm all in or I'm nothing." Her eyes widened, pain flashing across her face. "Emily." I shook my head, tears spilling before I could stop them. "Every day I stand in front of you, hoping you'll see me, remember me. And every day you look at me like I'm almost enough but not quite. It's tearing me apart." Her hands gripped the couch cushion, knuckles white. "I don't want you to stop." The words were fierce, desperate. I blinked through my tears. "Then what do you want?" Her voice broke. "I don't know." And then suddenly she was crying too. I moved without thinking, crossing the space between us. I gathered her in my arms, and this time she didn't resist. She clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder, shaking as though some invisible dam had cracked open. "I hate this," she whispered through tears. "I hate not knowing you. I hate feeling like I should love you and not being able to remember why. But when you hold me, it feels like home." Her words carved me open and stitched me back together all at once. "Then let's start there," I murmured, pressing my cheek to her hair. "Not with memory. Not with the past. Just with this. With us here now." She nodded against me, trembling. And for the first time since the accident, I felt her arms tighten around me, not out of politeness, not out of guilt, but out of need. From that night something shifted. She didn't suddenly regain everything, but she stopped running from me. She let herself linger in the same room, sit beside me on the couch without flinching, brush past me in the kitchen, and let the touch of our shoulders last a little longer. Sometimes she reached for my hand without realizing it, her fingers curling into mine instinctively. Each time I held on like it was a miracle. But healing is never smooth. One afternoon I found her outside, sitting on the porch steps, staring at the snow-dusted street. She looked pale, shaken. "What is it?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She hesitated, then whispered, "I remembered the accident." My heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" "I was driving. I saw the truck." And then she broke off, clutching her chest. "I heard myself screaming your name, Emily, over and over." Her body shook with the memory, and I wrapped my arms around her, holding her as tightly as I could. "It wasn't your fault," I whispered fiercely. "None of it was your fault. But why did my mind erase you?" she choked. Why erase the person I loved most? I had no answer. Only pain, only love. Maybe, I said, your brain was trying to protect you, but your heart never forgot me. That's why you're here. That's why we're still us. She trembled in my arms, tears falling onto my sweater. I don't know how to move forward. Then let me move with you, I said. One step at a time. That night she came to my room again. She stood at the doorway, silent, the light from the hall framing her like some fragile apparition. Emily, she whispered, can I stay? My chest ached with hope. Always. She slipped under the covers, her body stiff at first, then softening as I wrapped my arm around her. For a long time we lay in silence. And then in the darkness her voice trembled. Will you kiss me? The question stole my breath. Are you sure? I whispered. Yes. My heart pounded as I leaned in, brushing my lips gently against hers. It wasn't the wild, fiery kiss of our past. It was slow, tentative, searching. A kiss that asked, do you feel it too? And when she kissed me back, hesitant at first, then deeper, I knew. Her memory might be fractured, but her love was finding its way home. Yet even in that bliss, I sensed the storm still waiting beyond the horizon. Because memory returning can heal, but it can also destroy. And when Claire began to remember the pain we once shared, the fights, the doubts, the cracks in our perfect love, I knew the true test of us was only beginning. The storm came quietly. Not with shouting, not with slammed doors, but with fragments of memory that cut sharper than glass. Claire started remembering not only our joy, but our failures. One night, while we sat on the couch, she looked at me with trembling eyes. We fought before the accident, didn't we? My breath caught. Everyone fights. No, she pressed, shaking her head. I remember screaming. I remember slamming a door. I remember you crying and me walking out. What were we fighting about? I closed my eyes, shame washing over me. About work. About time. About me being gone too much. About you wanting more than I knew how to give. She swallowed hard, looking at her hands. So we weren't perfect. No, I whispered. But love never is. Her silence was heavy but not empty. She was piecing together a puzzle that terrified us both, one where love wasn't just laughter and kisses, but anger, fear, and mistakes too. The more she remembered, the more the distance returned. She began pulling away again, quiet, thoughtful, sometimes even cold. I tried not to panic, but one night I broke. Tell me the truth, I said, my voice raw. Are you remembering enough to know you don't want me anymore? Her eyes widened, hurt flashing through them. Emilino. Then why do you keep running? She looked at me for a long, silent moment. And then she said the words I dreaded. Because I'm scared I'll never love you the way you love me. The confession cracked me open. Tears burned my eyes, but I forced my voice to steady. Then don't force it. Don't love me out of guilt. Just be here. That's all I need. She reached for my hand, her grip trembling. But what if I break your heart all over again? I smiled through the ache. You already did. And I'm still here. Christmas came and with it light. We decorated the tree again, this time together, laughing as we tangled the string of lights. For the first time, her laugh didn't sound borrowed, it sounded hers. Ours. When the tree was done, she stood back, admiring it. And then she turned to me, her expression soft, vulnerable. Do you remember our first kiss? She asked. My chest tightened. On the pier. You kissed me before I could chicken out. Her lips curved and her eyes shimmered. I remembered it this morning. The salt in the air. Your hair blowing into my face. The way you whispered. Finally. Tears blurred my vision. You remembered. She stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. I'm starting to. Not everything. Not all at once. But enough to know. My heart never let go. And then without hesitation she kissed me. This time it wasn't tentative. It was fierce, aching, a reclaiming of something we both feared was lost forever. When we broke apart breathless, she whispered against my lips. Emily, I love you. I don't remember all the moments that built us, but I know this feeling. And I don't want to lose it again. I held her face in my hands, sobbing with joy. You won't. I swear you won't. The new year came and with it a quiet peace. She still didn't remember everything. Sometimes she'd stare at a photograph, searching for meaning. Sometimes she'd ask me to tell a story again, as though hoping repetition would stitch the past back together. But the truth was we didn't need the past to prove our love. We were building it again brick by brick, moment by moment. One night, curled in bed together, she whispered, "I think maybe love isn't about remembering. Maybe it's about choosing." Choosing? I echoed. Yes, choosing each other. Again and again, even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Even when memory fails. I pressed a kiss to her forehead, tears spilling freely. "Then I choose you. Always." She smiled, her breath warm against my skin. "Then I choose you too." Months later, spring arrived. The cherry blossoms bloomed, pink and fragile against the Boston sky. We walked hand in hand through the park, surrounded by families, couples, strangers who didn't know the war we'd fought to stand here together. At one point she stopped, looking at me with that gaze that once shattered me. Only now it didn't feel like the gaze of a stranger. Felt like home. "What is it?" I asked, smiling. She squeezed my hand. "Nothing. Just, I think I'm falling in love with you all over again." I laughed through tears, pulling her into my arms under the canopy of blossoms. "Then let it happen. Let's fall as many times as it takes." And there, in the soft pink rain of petals, we kissed two women who had broken, lost, forgotten, and yet somehow found their way back. Love, it turned out, wasn't just memory. It was survival. It was choice. It was us. Forever. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.